Welcome back to another episode of the Emotional Mastery with Rochelle podcast, the podcast where we talk about all things to self-regulate our emotions. Emotions for me have been the lesson of my life. They have been the biggest hurdle, biggest challenge. Emotions for me tend to be very overwhelming. They tend to take over. And as it relates to human design, as 50% of us are emotional beings and the other half are then taking and amplifying, like emotions are just huge, and finding ways to regulate my emotions really changed the game for me. So this is really just my space to share that journey, to share any tips, tricks, tools that I learn along the way that can help you self-regulate, because literally it's been life-changing, and I want to share that with as many people as I can, because we so often just walk around projecting on others. We project on the people that are closest to us, we project on the people that we love, we take personal things when, people project on us. And it really doesn't have to be that way. It can be so much more freeing, so different than that. And so, this is just my space to really share it all. And I learned human design a little over 2 years ago. So human design, all the topics that we're going to talk about really are going to be holistic health, human design, and astrology. So that is really the core piece of this podcast to share with you. Today, I really just want to talk about a little bit about just kind of what it's like to be a manifesting generator. I've been wanting to talk about this for a while, but I really want to start talking about, I know that I have been talking about manifestation a lot lately, but I really I'm just going to touch on it again, because again, I know I've been talking about it a lot lately. It's just been a really huge thing for me. It's been really cool to see things actually manifesting for me. But this past week, about a week ago, I invested in myself, and I invested in this podcast in a really cool and a really big way, and it feels really exciting for me. I have been doing this for about 2 years, and it was I took some time off this past year. I felt like I was just kind of pushing things out, but I had a ton of other things in the works, and I had freelance jobs, and there was just so much going on. And once I started this manifestation journey, when I started getting very clear and very serious about the things that I actually wanted, the things that I want to take up my time, the things that I want to pour my heart into, right? My heart, my soul, the things that I want to pour that into, what kept coming up for me was the podcast. And so after taking some time off and really getting back to it and reworking things, every time I would create a list, this podcast was on it, among other things like travel, working for myself, all of that great stuff. But the podcast was always up on there. And so, it got to the point for me where it's just, I feel so passionately about this. I want to help as many people as I can, share this message, spread this message, create a community where people can just get to know each other and support each other in this journey, because so many of us are going through this, right? So whether you're just starting or you're more, you've been in this for a while, like I said, I have personally been on this journey, this healing growth journey for about over 4 years now. And some days it's easy, some days it's a lot easier, and some days I feel like I'm right back at the beginning. So the path isn't linear, right? It's up and down, and having a space to come and talk about that and meet new people, right? Talk to people who I interview, connect with people and just learn their tools and what they do and their journey and their stories. It's just such a beautiful, beautiful thing. And so that's really what this is about for me. So that was kind of my really big, exciting news for me personally, but also for this podcast, because I know there's going to be a lot more love poured into it. It already had a lot of love, but just having this extra intention and love, and like I said, investing in myself and investing in this podcast and investing in you, because you are the listener, are the reason that I'm doing this, right? It is for me, but it is also for you. My hope is that whether it's one person, 10 people, 100 people, 1,000 people, however many people it is, just to get something out of this, to be able to, in a moment where you feel emotionally overwhelmed, have that moment where you're like, oh, well, maybe I can try this. Maybe I can try moving. Maybe I can try one of these tools that you've heard that I've talked about or resonating, or help you feel not so alone in your journey. That's what this is about for me. And so today I want to talk a little bit about just being a manifesting generator and what that means. I'm going to link down in the show notes all of the episodes on human design. So if you're not familiar with human design and you want to know a little bit more about it, you can go back to those and really listen. I've had guests speak on human design. I've done a couple episodes on human design. So today I'm really just going to talk about being a manifesting generator in general, and I'll briefly touch on each type. But if you're not familiar with human design, if you are familiar with human design, feel free to skip over the next 5 minutes. But if you are fairly new and would like to know a little bit more, stick with me. So we have 5 types in human design. Human design is essentially, to me, it's a blueprint, right? It's a permission slip to be who you are. It's a blueprint to who you are, to your soul, to you, who you are at a soul level. When I learned human design, it literally changed the game. It changed my life. I had been doing the growth work. I had been on this journey, but something was just, I was, after years of not knowing who I was, struggling to accept myself, to love myself, when I found human design and could literally see like who I was on paper and see all of the ways that I was not wrong, right? It was just like to see that I hope it had an undefined G, to see that I had an undefined ego center, to see that I was a 6/3 profile was huge for me. It just really was like, okay, Rochelle, all of these things that you have internalized as being wrong about yourself your whole life is just who you are. And that's a beautiful thing. And it really allowed me to relax into it, right? Like I said, healing isn't linear, right? So it's like even knowing all of the human design, and sometimes we can get caught up in it. Like we are the human design and we have to forget that we are the human behind the design, right? So we are the human. We intuitively know what is best for us. So within human design, you have 5 types. You have generator types, which are about 70% of the population. And those are broke down between generators and manifesting generators. Essentially, they are all generators. Being a manifesting generator, of course, I think there's a huge difference between them, but in essence, they are generators, right? They have the sacral, which is the work life force energy. They have their sacral defined. So they are going to run with that, right? That is the core of it. They have this ability to tap into the sacral. The sacral is beautiful and it's very cool because it actually speaks through you. So what does that mean? When we look at the sacral, when we talk about that and people, when we hear people say generator is the sacral, you're able to tap into it and that speaks to you. It really just means like when you're a kid or when you're little and you hear people go, right? It's all of these noises that you can really tap into. And what's really cool is you can find people that you are close to, that you trust and that are safe and all those things. And you can have them ask you questions, right? Like, do you want to go for dinner tonight? Right? Like, even just like asking myself, because I was debating going out tonight and like being able to tap into that. You may or may not have that as your authority, and that's fine. That is for a whole other podcast, but essentially your inner authority is your intuition, right? It's a thing that you can tap into. There are 7 different ones. I believe there's another episode on that. If not, there's a blog post on it. I will also link the blog in the show notes. You can go over there and check that out. But like for me, for instance, I have emotional authority. And so I need to, even though I can tap into the sacral and I can understand and know what it's telling me, I still have to run things through my emotional authority, right? So I may get that in the moment that hell yes. And one thing I've learned to say is, hey, this feels really good right now. Let me sleep on it. That's become my trick because I always want to say like, yes, yes, yes. Plus I have an undefined root center. And so that gives additional pressure. But side note, so manifesting generators and generators, the difference between them is that a manifesting generator has your throat center activated, connected to a motor. So your motor is going to be the ego, the emotional solar plexus, the sacral, or the root. So if you have any of these connections, you are a manifesting generator. So again, what is the difference? Your generator, your not self is frustration, as is with the manifesting generator. You also have an element of anger in there because the manifestor not self is anger. And then you have, so a generator will kind of go, if you're looking from going from point A to point B, a generator is going to be more, in my experience, I feel like the generators can be more methodical in that, right? Where it's like you're going to kind of go like step by step. You're going to hit a point of frustration, push through that, hit the next point of frustration, push through that, hit the next point of frustration, push through that. Manifesting generator is multitasking, passionate. Not that the generator isn't passionate, but the manifesting generator is going to be multitasking. We're going to have a lot of different things on our plates, right? We're going to be able to be like multi-passionate and do different things all at the same time. And we're going to want to like jump from point A to point B. And really what we're here to do is kind of find the quickest and most efficient way to get from point A to point B. But within that, a lot of times we do skip these steps and we have to kind of go back and redo them and work on them. So sometimes you may look at it and be like, oh, the MG gets there a lot faster than the generator, but really essentially we get there at the same time. Our process is just very different. I'm a manifesting generator and my kids are both generators. So I can see like their step-by-step process. It's like they have to know this, they have to do this, they have to do this, right? Like, and I'm kind of like all over the place and I do things very quickly. And I can see how that is a little bit unnerving for them, I guess. Like it's just not their process. And so that's also the beautiful thing about this, especially as a parent, because you get to have this tool to raise your kids the way that they are meant to be, right? So that's your MGs and your generators. You have your manifestors, which have no sacral defined, but have a connection from the throat to the motor. And then you have your projectors, which don't have a sacral defined and they don't have to have that other connection. And then you have your reflectors, which have 0 centers defined at all. So they are literally like the mirrors of our society. They're so important. They're 1%. Projectors are 18% and manifestors are 8%. I believe those are the correct percentages, but the last time I checked. So every single one is important in its own way. But I've noticed, like, especially as a manifesting generator, it can be really hard for me sometimes. I feel like I can be super scattered just because I have so many passions and directions and things that I want to do. So for me, lists have been so helpful to like literally make out a list, right? Especially as an emotional authority. I'll make a list of things that I want to do, things that I want to purchase, things that I want to buy. And I tend to do this 3 times rule. So if it comes to me 3 times, then I'll like seriously consider it, right? But it's always the little things that get me, the little purchases, that at the end of the day don't really matter, but I'm really trying to work on having that emotional authority really be like my guiding force, because I've really noticed that it really does make a difference in my life. But making lists has been really, really helpful in getting clear on the things that are actually important. And I just literally, I'm on like day 2 or day 3 of using it. I'll link it also down below, but I was recommended this time blocking planner. And I'm usually really bad about blocking out my time like that. I just even when I make a plan, I think like setting the intention is cool because then like I have it in my mind for the rest of the day. But a lot of times like I'll make a plan and then I never really follow it because I get distracted by this, I get distracted by that. You know what I mean? Like I have this passion that comes up and I have this task that I have to do and I forgot about doing something here. And then I get an email about doing something there and it can get really like, And so I think like sometimes as a manifesting generator, that kind of stuff comes in. But like having this time blocking planner, it's actually like excited me about getting organized, and organization usually doesn't get me that excited. I think because of like just having this like big change in intention and perspective also with this podcast has also got me excited. But just being able to like, refine things down. So again, this is a little bit more of a, I guess, advanced element of human design too. But you also have your determination. And so your determination in human design, the way you eat, right? So mine is alternating. So it's also not just the way that you eat, it's also the way that you take in information. And for me, I take in information, my determination is alternating. So this is actually one of the oldest digestion systems too, is this alternating. And it's really just the idea on your plate, if you think about what you're eating, is like you want to have, obviously, the ideal plate is to have non-processed foods, plant-based, straight from the source, protein, meat, whatever you want, but just to have it as real as it can be. But on top of that, with the alternating is you don't want too many flavors combined in one, right? Alternating will literally like alternate between the example that's given, which I think is very restrictive. And as I'm learning and flowing and listening to different people, I think Jenna Zoe has a really great explanation for alternating determination that makes me feel not so restricted. But the way that it's described, like in the human design, like raw books, is that alternating is literally like, you want to have potatoes, you want to have chicken, you want to have your vegetable, and don't even combine them. Don't put salt on them, like put piece of salt, put the salt in your tongue and then take a bite of this. And to me, that's really restrictive. I have always been used to, and it could just be a cultural thing, a way that I was brought up. I was always a really fast eater too. I don't know. I feel like I thought my brother was just going to eat everything and I would never have a chance to eat, but that's besides the point. So I mush everything up on the plate. But I think the really core piece to this alternating, which really resonated with me and feels really good to me, and especially as I eat my food, is just to have things that are as close to the source as possible. So again, not having that processed food because you're mixing a whole bunch of ingredients into that, right? So having things that are as down to the source as they can, flavorful, right? Because that's part of it, is like, especially Taurus, Sun, Leo, Moon, Leo, Rising, like I'm all about the flavors and the sensuality of like meals and the tastes and the smells and all that kind of stuff. But being able to have that, and like sometimes it is alternating with meals. Like if maybe one day I want to eat, I don't know, pasta, the next day I want to eat soup, and kind of alternating between those. But the point I was really getting at, more so than the food, was that as an MG with this alternating determination, alternating can also be the way that we take in information. So for me, what works best is not to take it all in at once, right? It's having a focus on like 1 or 2 things, because with the manifesting generator part, like I am multi-passionate, right? I'm multitasking. There's all these components that I can do multiple things at once, but it's really important that I've noticed like being able to do 1 or 2 things, even when it comes to like my business. when I first started out, I wanted to be on Twitter. I wanted to be on TikTok. I wanted to be on Instagram. I wanted to be on Facebook. I wanted to have the podcast. I wanted to have the blog. And it was so overwhelming. I was like, no. I can't be all over these places. I can't give that much energy to that much. So I then chose a couple different things. And along the way, of course, I've like dabbled in and played with a few different things. Like I throw stuff on TikTok every now and again, but it's not where my focus goes. And, even in having offerings and promoting and marketing myself, it was like one-on-ones and then this other program and then the workbook. And so even that has been further refined now into just like, especially like I said, this podcast is going to be one of my top priorities. And so it's going to be the podcast, it's going to be one-on-one sessions, and it's going to be the blog. Those are now going to be my 3 core pieces, and then taking pieces of that and like putting them elsewhere. So like Instagram, like repurposing content and being able to put it where it needs to go, but primarily Instagram, because that's just kind of like, Instagram has a little piece of my heart. I love it. But so really being able to like hone in and alternate, right? Having that time blocking has really helped me. And like, okay, so like Monday, we're going to edit a podcast. Tuesday, we're going to write a blog. Thursday, we're going to record a podcast. Thursday, I'm going to post the podcast. You know what I mean? Like just having this, being able to create more of a structure for myself and alternate between them has been really helpful. Even like right now, I was supposed to be doing something else. But again, like I also want to flow with the inspiration as it hits. So I was literally in meditation and I was inspired to come here and record this. I really noticed that sometimes as a manifesting generator, which works for me, like I was in the service industry, being in the service industry, not a lot of people may know, but I do bartend as well. So I have like everything else, the kids, and then I bartend. Honestly, I started bartending. COVID hit, I lost my 9-to-5, I was in marketing, and that was really when I decided I wanted to push this business. I really decided I had no excuses anymore, right? Like that was the beautiful thing about COVID. I was working towards my health coaching certification, my gut health certification. Of course, I was learning all the human design stuff, but when I was in marketing working 9-to-5, and then the kids, I just didn't have enough time to actually be serious about my business. And so when COVID hit and I lost my job, I didn't even really freak out that much. I knew there was something in me where it was like, this is opening up a chance for you to do the thing that you want to do, to put time and effort in consistency to showing up for this thing that you really want to do. And so it had been like, so that was March. And then October of last year, I decided to start bartending because I was literally like in my house with my 4 walls. And so when I started bartending again, for one, I got like crazy social anxiety for like a good 2 weeks. And then once I settled into it, I genuinely love the service industry. I think because I love having those conversations. You meet like really incredible, interesting, fascinating people, have really great conversations. And I don't take it too seriously. I let things roll off of me. And so I really just look at it as a way to connect to people and serve people and be a smile, right? Like, so I don't know where that was starting, what my point was with that. But yeah, so that is a part of what I do. So being in the service industry, I think just lights me up in the sense of like serving people, connecting with people. It does exhaust me though sometimes, but it also really works as a manifesting generator because I can multitask. I can have these really quick movements. I can focus on one thing. I can focus on another thing, and I'm very quick with it. And I think I really enjoy being that busy. And that's also why I don't like really stress out about it, because I don't have time to actually think when you're busy, right? Because we're not always like super busy like that. But typically when you're that busy, like I really thrive in that environment. It's when I can have the time to think and overthink really is when it starts to get to me. But yeah, so being an MG, I think that's definitely a really cool thing. And I actually, one bartender I was talking to, she is actually a projector. And so I was doing, we were talking a little bit about it. And I asked her, I was like, you must be worn out at the end of the day. And she was like, yeah, when I get home sometimes, like I just literally like crash. Like I am so drained from the day and being a projector in the service industry. And I was kind of like asking people, and a lot of people are MGs within the service industry, at least the place that I'm at. I don't know if that's like a universal thing, but I would imagine that it would be quite common because generators are 70% of the population, but also like because MGs and generators are like so quick and can have that energy, that would make sense that would be like the backbone of the service industry, right? Because like we are here to respond, right? We are here to work. And so literally that is like what that industry does. That is what it is. And so just a side note that I thought was really interesting, but I wanted to come on and just kind of talk about being an MG. And I think more importantly for me, the biggest thing for me learning was being a 6-3. because being a 6'3" is constant trial and error. And I'm 35 now, and I don't even really get to sit on the roof. I have friends that are 6'2s, and I'm really jealous because, not really, because I chose this life and I chose everything about it. And so this is just part of it for me, but they will just kind of like disappear for a little while, and they just get to chill up there and like watch everything else and take in and process. And I'm kind of like bouncing back and forth between it all, but that's also what I'm here to do. And so I also sort of love that, even though sometimes it gets overwhelming and frustrating, but that's also where it's learning that when I am frustrated, which is my not self theme, like, what do I need? Do I need to relax? Right? Like, I sometimes like feel the need to fill my time so much. Like, even tonight I was doing the time block thing, and there was an hour that I didn't have anything that I left open, right? Between like getting the kids and having dinner, and then the other thing I was supposed to do, but now I'm recording a podcast, but I had an hour. And so I journaled. I spent some time to journal. I even blocked off time when I'm going to check my email, which actually feels really freeing. Like, I see the notifications and it drives me crazy. I'm like, don't do it until the allotted time. And I was trying to fill my time, and I was like, okay, well, why don't you just read, or why don't you do this after I had finished journaling? And I was like, this is a great opportunity to just meditate. And so I just decided to go sit with myself for the last 15 minutes of that hour block that I had. I had some tea, and it just felt really good to have that something, like, I don't have to fill it with something, right? I have tons to do, of course. But with this, I'm able to kind of like plan my weeks. And it's just a really cool tool. So again, I will link that in the show notes. That wasn't even what I come on here to really talk about, but it's just like the organization aspect of it and really being able to see and lay out my week in front of me. I'm a huge pen and paper person. Like, I love the calendar app on the phone to like sync everything up, but I also really like to like tangibly see it in front of me laid out like that. So just being able to see my week and planning it, blog, podcast, content creation, all that stuff like out there, and having a lot of times for it, so far has been really helpful and really cool, because it just helps like channel this MG energy and be able to have that alternating aspect in there and have that multitasking aspect in there, and having the freedom to obviously change. Like I said, I don't necessarily batch record podcasts. I tend to more so do it when the inspiration hits, but I like to have 4 to 5 already recorded that I can go and edit. And so then I will just free flow and, record these as they come to me. So that's kind of why I just popped in just now to like really talk about this. But so I got a question on Instagram that I really wanted to come here and answer regarding manifesting generators. And the question really was, I struggle with the opportunities will find you. You just decide on them when they come versus taking inspired action. It's hard to know when to act and when to rest and trust. Help, with a smiley face. So when you are a generator type, right, an MG or a generator, your strategy is to wait to respond. I think a lot of people, kind of whatever your type is, right? If you're a projector and you have to wait for the invitation, reflector, you have to wait a lunar cycle. Even manifestors who can take action and initiate still have to slow down to inform before they actually take the action, right? So it's really, a lot of human design is really experimenting with your strategy and authority. So if your strategy as a manifesting generator is to wait to respond, this doesn't mean do nothing, right? And I think a lot of people think that because they have to wait for something, that means they literally just sit here like twiddling their thumbs, or they have to just wait for somebody to throw it in their lap, right? Like with anything, with any manifestation, spirituality, really anything, like we can still take action. And the thing will flow to us when we are responding. And the thing with responding is we are constantly responding to life, right? Like you hear a bird and you whistle, you see an Instagram post and you click a link, you see an ad and maybe you make a phone call. Like our entire life, you smell something delicious and you order food, or you want to go to a restaurant, right? Like responding doesn't have to mean like, oh, I am a person coming to you and telling you you should launch this. It's about doing the things that you love and doing the things that you're passionate about and doing the things that light you up, especially as an MG, right? Because MGs are multi-talented, multi-passionate. We can juggle a few different things at the same time. We're here to figure out the most efficient way to get from point A to point B. Within that, we're going to hit frustration, right? Because we might go from point A to point B and then realize like, oh shit, I got to go back and fix all of these mistakes that I kind of made along the way. But then the next time I go through that, or the next time, say you're a 6 line and you're teaching somebody else, like you'll kind of figure that out. So it's not so much about sitting and doing nothing. It's about doing things that light you up and putting your work out there, right? Like say you want to create a course. Okay, so I am responding to the idea of a course, right? I'm going to create everything. I'm going to add, I'm going to talk about it to people And you're going to constantly in those conversations, like you'll have things to respond to, right? If there's no interest, then okay, maybe I pivot and shift and change my idea. And then when there is interest, like, oh my gosh, I can't wait for you to put that out there. Oh my gosh, can I please get on a wait list? And so you are putting things out there in response to things, right? In response to interest, like you do the thing that excites you and people are going to come to you. Now, the difference between a manifesting generator and a generator is because when a manifesting generator has the thing to respond to, when they can then take action, they have that manifestor part of them where they want to go from point A to point B, right? They want to initiate. So they have that element of informing involved. And so MGs can just work really, really fast. And again, it's not to say that you work faster than a generator or you're going to get somewhere faster than a generator. It's just a different process. Generators, when they have the thing to respond to, and as a generator type, whether you're an MG or a pure generator, the only two authorities you're going to have is either going to be sacral or emotional. And so when you have a sacral authority, it's actually, this is your intuition, right? It's actually really cool in the sense that you can actually tap into that. You can ask people around you to help you tap into that. So if you have people in your life that you can be like, hey, ask me yes or no questions, right? And it goes both ways. So if you have two generator types, right? If you're in partnership and you're a generator and a generator, one generator asks the other a question. Do you want to do a podcast? Uh-huh. And it doesn't just end there, right? Then the other person asks back, oh, well, do you want to do a podcast? Uh-huh. Okay, well, what do you want to do it on? Spirituality or human design? Human design. What do you want to do it on? You know what I mean? Like it's kind of that back and forth. And it's just really cool to be able to tap into your intuition. And even if you're emotional authority as an MG or a generator, like I'm an emotional authority, I still get those in the moment sacral responses. I can still have people tap into that and be like, oh, well, do you want pizza tonight or do you want sushi? And I can be like, okay, sushi, right? Like you can still tap into that regardless of whether you have emotional authority or not. It's still available for you. That's just not going to be the deciding factor, right? That's not going to be your intuition. And depending on how it's, connected, if it is consciously connected or unconsciously connected, like my sacral is unconscious. So I can tap into it, but I may not feel it as strongly as somebody who maybe is emotional with the sacral consciously connected. So there's a lot of nuanced details in there that go along with it. But I think to answer this specific question is that you can take aligned action. You don't have to sit and do nothing. And I think the more you experiment with your design, the more you play with it. Like for me, emotional authority took me like well over like a year and a half to even kind of like get a grasp on, right? Like I had to play with it. I had to experiment with it. I had to see like, okay, well, this doesn't work for me. This doesn't feel good for me. But when I hold off and I wait like 24 hours or I wait for the thing to come to me and then I kind of tap into my sacral a little bit. I kind of tap into my spleen a little bit. I personally have both of those defined and then running it through my wave. So it really comes back to just playing with your authority, playing with your strategy, figuring out what feels good for that. And at the end of the day, the thing with human design is I think a lot of times we allow the human design to define us, but really it's the human defining the human design, right? So the human design is really showing us who we are at a soul level. It shows us where our conditioning is held. So you may have a lot of conditioning and find it really hard to tap into your sacral response. So just kind of like looking at those things and playing with those things, but trusting yourself. And I think the beautiful thing about human design is that by learning your strategy and authority, by feeling how fluid that is and how things flow when you follow that, you begin to trust yourself more. So it's these little baby steps. Try tapping into that sacral. And generators, like if you are a sacral authority, when you tap into that sacral response and it's a hell yes. And the thing with the sacral, if it's not a hell yes, it's a hell no. And it doesn't have to be a hell no like permanently. It's just a not right now kind of thing. But when you tap into that sacral and you're like, okay, yes, this is the thing. This feels good. This is what I want to do. My whole body's like lit up with this. And as a sacral, I've been told like when it's a sacral, yes, your body just kind of like moves, right? You just like go. There's no hesitation. And so when you have that response, like you're still going to hit points of frustration along the way. That is the generator process. Like move forward, hit a point of frustration, figure it out, move forward, hit a point of frustration, figure it out, move forward. So this theme of frustration is going to be part of your process. It's just a matter of pushing through it and then the magic happens, right? Then that aligned action, showing the universe that yes, like through this frustration, this is still the thing that I want. This still lights up my sacral. This is still the thing that I want to move forward with. That's kind of like where that comes in. So again, just experiment with it, play with it, MG or a generator, really to respond. If you're an MG, you have that little element of informing in there. And then whether you're emotional or sacral, play with it, have fun with it, see what works for you. Because I promise once you figure out what works for you, things just start like flowing easier and easier. For me as an emotional authority, like my favorite line is now when I have to do something or someone's waiting for a response and my root usually acts up. First of all, I have awareness now that I'm just like, okay, calm down. We don't need to give an answer right now. And if they do need an answer right now, then the thing probably isn't for me. But it's my response now is like, this feels really good right now. Let me just sleep on it. Or this feels really good right now. Let me let you know in an hour. This feels, like giving myself a little bit of time, because Ra says like, if you're emotional authority, speaking to emotional authorities right now, like always play hard to get, right? Like put off the thing as long as you can, because we're never really going to be 100% clear on the thing we can do, which can be really confusing, but really just, again, playing with it, experimenting with it, and see what feels good for you. That's really what it was. Life is an MG. If you resonate, let me know. You can always catch me on Instagram. You can send me an email. And I would love to do more of these. So if you are a projector, a reflector, or a manifestor and would like to actually come on here and talk about it, again, send me a DM on Instagram or send me an email, because I can speak to my experience as an MG and I can speak to the experience of like a generator, reflector, projector, and manifestor from like my knowledge, but it's not the same as like actually having somebody who lives that experience. So I would love to talk to somebody on here that can speak to their experience as one of those types that, to help other people, or that somebody else can resonate with if you're not an MG, and more than just like me by the books talking about it, or me speaking of my experience of talking to other people and having it actually come straight from somebody who is living that experience day in and day out. So that was just my little life as an MG, and really excited just to really get into this more. And it feels so good. I've been feeling so lit up by the podcast, and really, like I said, just like investing in myself in this way, and investing in this podcast, and investing in you guys this way feels so cool and so big and so powerful. And I'm really, really excited to see where this goes from here. So as always, I love to hear from you guys. Please rate, review, subscribe, share, anything you feel called to do. And until next week,